Okay, can you, so I'm assuming you're hearing me, so everybody can hear me okay. Um, Here's tonight's agenda. We usually wait a few minutes to let people get on. Um, we'll go ahead and get started, and if our guest presenter isn't on by then, we'll just turn it into a family meeting and take your questions. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Utah Prisoner Advocate February meeting. We're grateful to have you guys here tonight, and as we come together to learn and share and hopefully advocate for our incarcerated loved ones. For those of you that are joining us again for the first time, thank you for taking the step to be here. My name is Shane Severson. I'll be helping facilitate tonight's discussion. Before we dive into the meat and potatoes of everything, let's take a moment to acknowledge a few housekeeping matters. Firstly, please note that the session is being recorded and will be available on our Facebook and YouTube channel later tonight, shortly after the meeting concludes. And that ensures that those that couldn't join us today can catch up later. To make the meeting as interactive as possible, we encourage those of you that are on the Zoom call with us to participate by asking respectful questions or commenting at the appropriate times. Feel free to use the raise hand button and we'll unmute you accordingly if you're not able to. If you're on a mobile device, sometimes you just need to tap on the screen to see the controls because sometimes it goes away and people can't find the raise hand button. So if you're not seeing it, that might be why. Also, feel free to post any questions for the UPAN directors or the guest speaker in the Zoom chat, and we'll do our best to address them during the appropriate times. And then also for the courtesy of everybody, please try to remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking, and that'll help keep the background noise to a minimum. And you can find us. Our Facebook page is Utah Prisoner Advocate or excuse me, facebook.com/Utah Prisoner. So that's where you can go to find the recording tonight. So we know that it can be hard. I just told you some email addresses and some URLs. We know that it can be hard to keep track of all those resources that we've accumulated over time. So what we've done is we've created this easy one URL to remember. We recommend that you bookmark this. That's not a typo. It does indeed say https linktree.ee right there, /Utah Prisoner. I think if you type linktree.com/Utah Prisoner, it also goes to the same thing, but that is the correct URL. So if you write down this one URL, you'll see this page and it's got all of our most important links on it, like our website. You could subscribe to newsletter. You can find flyers about UPAN, find UPAN newsletter past issues, our contact details, links to our Facebook group. All the goodies are all there. So we recommend that you jot that down. And again, for the benefit of those of you that are new or unfamiliar with UPAN, I want to give a little bit of a background about who we are. So UPAN is a 501c3 nonprofit, which means we are an all-volunteer grassroots organization dedicated to advocating for meaningful change within Utah's criminal justice system. Our mission is to promote reform and provide support to incarcerated individuals and their families and work toward a more just and humane prison system. As Molly was saying earlier, we were founded in 2013 by individuals deeply passionate about justice, many of whom have personal experiences with the criminal justice system. UPAN's committed to amplifying the voices of those who are often marginalized and overlooked. We believe in the dignity and worth of every single person, including those who are incarcerated, and we work tirelessly to advocate for their rights and well-being. Through education outreach, collaboration with community partners, we address issues like prison conditions, access to healthcare and mental health services, rehabilitation and reentry programs, and the impact of mass incarceration on families and communities. We do this in 4 primary ways. The first one is education, where we host monthly support meetings such as this one and send out newsletters to keep the public informed about important issues. Our UPAN website is listed there. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, you can go to our website and subscribe. Secondly, we have dialogue. We engage in open discussions with the Utah Department of Corrections and county jail administrators to advocate for change and address concerns. Legislative advocacy. Um, we work with the UPAN constituents. That's you guys, on how to work with your lawmakers to push for policies that promote fairness and accountability in the criminal justice system. Because of we're a nonprofit, we're not a lobbying group. We're not allowed to lobby. So we train the public on how to be basically good citizens and how to engage with legislators. Community engagement, we host guest speakers, form coalitions with like-minded organizations, and maintain a network of helpful resources. Our network is made up of mostly volunteers, but also criminal justice advocates, industry professionals, expert advisors, coalition organizations, formerly incarcerated individuals, over 2,500 Utah families of the incarcerated, and we continue to grow. At the core of our work are the stories and experiences of incarcerated individuals and their families, and by listening to their voices and working together, we believe that we can create meaningful change and build a more equitable and compassionate society. Whether you're a longtime supporter or new to our cause, we invite you to join us in making a difference. If you'd like to learn more on how to get involved, we encourage you to visit us online. So we got the UPAN website, utahprisoneradvocate.org, our Facebook page, facebook.com/utahprisoner. And earlier I mentioned that we had two private Facebook groups. The first one is the UPAN Family Support Group at facebook.com/groups/UPAN Family Support. Again, the link is also in that link tree. And then we have a second one that is UPAN Volunteers Committees Working Group. This one's open. Well, you have to join, but this one's more open. This one you have to answer questions. We validate that you're indeed a family member. So this one's just for family members of the incarcerated. We try to keep it a safe space. The second one for volunteers and committees is so that volunteers can talk with other volunteers and message each other and try to get things off the ground. And if you're interested in, if we're not covering topics that are of interest to you, you can always feel free to reach out to UPAN directors and we can get a program going together. Go ahead, Molly.
I just want to clarify on the UPAN Family Support Group, that also includes some formerly incarcerated individuals that give some really good feedback regarding the conditions that they experienced when they were in prison. So we do let formerly incarcerated into that as well. And then we have some other advocacy organizations that can look at what's going on in our group as well. But they're prison advocacy.
Yeah.
So just so you're aware, they're all people that are prison journey friendly. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Um, so these are the UPAN directors. They're a dedicated team. So like I said, we're all 100% volunteer. Most of us all have day jobs that aren't prison related. Molly is maybe the one special exception, even though that she's retired now. As a licensed clinical social worker, she was the person that was kind of the impetus to all of this, to bringing us together in her experience with working with corrections the past 30 years or so. We couldn't do this without Molly. We have from addressing medical and mental health concerns to policy advocacy, programming, reentry resources, and more. Our team brings expertise and passion to everything that we do. So all their names are listed here on the slide. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions or need support in a specific area. We're all here to help. Like we mentioned earlier, our general inbox is contact@utahprisoneradvocate.org for general inquiries, or you can also email us at medteam, just MEDTEAM, medteam@utahprisoneradvocate.org for medical inquiries. And again, these are also in that link tree. The UPAN directors also have direct emails from which they'll respond when replying to your questions. As I mentioned earlier, again, it's all volunteer run. If you're interested in volunteering, please reach out to us by sending an introduction to our volunteer coordinator at volunteer@utahprisoneradvocate.org. I think right now that routes to you, Molly. No prior experience is necessary. Additionally, we're always looking for honest, reliable, and self-motivated individuals to join us as volunteers. If you're passionate about becoming a local subject matter expert, exploring new areas of advocacy, go ahead, shoot us an email at that same address, and we can discuss what your interests are and see if you're a right fit. Okay. So this is the point where I usually turn it over to our guest speaker, and I'm looking in here. Valerie, are you in here somewhere? I don't see you. Okay, so I think at this point, Molly, I maybe I'll turn it over to you for a second, and we can just have just kind of a general discussion. If Valerie does get on, I'll keep an eye on it here, and maybe she can still do a quick presentation if she sees us. If not, I think we can just open it up for general questions. Just have a family meeting. Is that
I think
okay?
that sounds good. Do you want to take this cover page off?
Yeah.
And
So
thank you.
so this is
Um,
basically what we usually talk about. We usually save this for the end, the last half hour, but we can just make this more time. Sounds like you got a lot of questions.
yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff we can talk about, both questions and I do want to add, I recommend anybody on here who's new also should subscribe to the UPAN monthly newsletter. It's I have one that was returned right here. Um, it's right now it's 5 pages because of the way the prison has changed, but we send out every month for the last 12 years, 13 years now, a monthly newsletter, and it's usually 10 pages long, front and back, so we can mail it on 5 pieces of paper. For those of you who are new, well, for those of you who aren't aware, we're cutting it down to 5 pages because of the UDC rules in the mailing room. Allows 5 pages one-sided only in an envelope. So for now, we're cutting that down. We attempted to go into an agreement to get it put on the tablets in both prisons, but they wanted us to sign a memorandum of understanding that had some legal language in there that the attorney we consulted with weren't comfortable and that some of the UPenn directors were not comfortable with. And so that has not occurred yet. So unfortunately, March's is going to be 5 pages long too until we figure out what to do. Families could send it in if it were 10 pages in two separate envelopes, but we have 60 newsletter volunteers that send in newsletters to about 400 incarcerated people who do not have family to do it. Like they just don't have a support system in the community and at their own cost. So that would double the newsletter cost. And right now it costs about $3.50 per newsletter if we look at the postage and the copy costs in the anyway. So that would double it to $6 per newsletter. And we have some people sending out like 20 newsletters. So that would be very expensive. So that's where we are with that. But I do recommend everybody that's not receiving the newsletter to subscribe. We try to put timely issues in there. And the other thing is we're in the middle of the legislative session, and UPAN as an organization does not lobby. However, Molly Prince, Shane Severson, individuals, I'm a citizen, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a resident of Utah. I can write the legislators. I just don't do it on UPAN letterhead. I do it on my own. And we've been active doing that this session because there's a lot of legislation out there we've been trying to keep it posted on the family Facebook group. There's a lot of stuff on there that I wish we would have had a heads up ahead of time, but Senate Bill 93 is of concern. Darren Owens is the sponsor, and it is looking to change some rules specifically that will matter in USCF. Because when Utah State Correctional Facility, the new prison was built, it was built with the idea that it would have what's called tiered housing. And so they built 8-man cells in it. Well, I told him back then, they said, well, 8-man cells are going to be a privilege. And I told him back then, would you really want to live with 7 other people that you didn't get to choose? I don't think so. But they did it. We gave them our feedback. They did what they did with the idea that it was going to be what's called tiered housing, meaning everybody that's at the same privilege level is housed together in those 8-man cells. So you're not mixing people that are going to extort or beat up or assault or whatever other people. But the way they're housing people now, they are mixed. They do not have tiered housing in place. I was told last week that sometime in 2026, and I don't blame them, they don't want to give a deadline because unforeseen things pop up and they need enough staff. But the plan is to open Bear 3 in USCF, which has been closed since they moved in 2022. And if they do that, that might be the phase 1 of the tiered housing. But as it's been for the past 3 years, 3.5 now, the housing structure is not safe. And this bill will minimize and make it more flexible for UDC to maybe not implement the direct supervision in tiered housing, and it separates the direct supervision from the tiered housing. Direct supervision in prisons that have those 8-man cells and that are designed for direct supervision, it means you've always got an officer in the section. And the idea is those officers get to know the inmates get to know them, and so they're able to more effectively know when something's going wrong. The staffing patterns have not been that they have had consistent same staffing in those housing units. So, according to UDC, the the wording in this bill will allow them to be more flexible and implement tiered housing in appropriate housing areas. Okay, Antelope, you already have tiered housing. People are on the high side or the low side. You do not have 8-man cells. It's easier for officers to see what's going on. You have limited rec. You don't have 100 people going out on rec together like you do in general population. In Green at USCF, for example, the substance use and sex offense treatment programs, those are very structured as well. But in the general population of the Bears, where we need it the most, we're very concerned that this bill would dilute the responsibility of UDC to get that implemented, that we've been waiting. The first bill was passed in 21 before they even moved into the prison. It was modified in 24 to allow direct supervision in a play like in Antelope. It could be waived if another housing structure is used. Anyway, that's a very lengthy, well, it's an overview of what's happening. But the other piece of this bill that's of concern is that it takes away the mandatory reporting of UDC on their progress in tiered housing and direct supervision. And that's one of the biggest things that at least 2 advocate groups that I know of, UPAN included, are very, very concerned about. So there's that one. So get on our family group, read about it, write your legislators. The Senate Judiciary, Law Enforcement, and Criminal Justice Committee will probably be the next one that's going to hear this. It already, I'm pretty sure, because it hadn't been heard yet. when I wrote my letters. So that's one. Another one of serious concern for everybody in the state of Utah is Mike Schultz. Oh, what is that? I can't remember the number. It's HB 274, I think. Mike Schultz is trying to restructure the sentencing commission that makes the sentencing guidelines that are what the Board of Pardons looks at on how long they keep people in prison, right? Not only how the judge sentences them, but then how long they're kept in prison because we're on indeterminate sentencing. So 5 to life, 10 to life, 1 to 15. He is trying to take currently, it's a 15-person commission made up of correctional people, law enforcement people, prosecutors, and defense attorneys, and one person from a victim advocates group. He is trying to take off all three defense attorneys and replace them with law enforcement because he thinks that we're just too soft on crime here. In reality, they're worried about the worst of the worst cases when in fact, who's going to be hurt by this are the people that need the least amount of imprisonment and could be, if we put money towards diversion, meaning you go to programs in the community, maybe you're on ISP, maybe you're on a ankle monitor, maybe you're on house arrest, except for you can go to work and you can go to treatment. If they would put more money to that, we could keep people out of our prisons and they would learn how to live in the world while they're making their changes and doing their therapy versus having to deal with living in prison where they're sometimes learning how to be more of a criminal, if you will, and then coming out and having to adjust. So this is of serious concern, and I just urge everybody to read it. And if it concerns you, write your legislators. And the next place, does it say where the next place is? Okay, it's going to the Senate
It's
Rules
close.
Committee next, tomorrow.
That means it's
Oh,
very close.
it went today. Okay, so this means you need to go start writing this, your senator for sure. But I would say the Senate Judiciary Committee, wouldn't that be where that's supposed to go to next
It's
after it
it.
goes to rules? Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll
I
go
think
to the
so.
Senate Judiciary, Law Enforcement, and Criminal Justice Committee. And we've put the names of the people on that committee and their emails in posts on our family group. But you can look them up on this that Shane's showing, le.utah.gov, and go to the Senate. Okay, go to the Senate Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Committee. Yeah, this is it. So you can get these names and you can click on each one of those names and you can get their email addresses. So, but seriously, Utah Corrections Watch, which is another advocacy group that's worried about this stuff, has even posted some sample letters on our family Facebook group that could help inform you on, okay, how do I write this? Anyway, so those are the two pressing updates that I want to give you. And now I think it's time we can take questions and then just go to whatever topics people. Okay, somebody says Utah Corrections Watch, question mark. Utah Corrections Watch is another advocacy group paying attention to what's going on in the Department of Corrections and in our prisons. I'm going to go to the chat and see what we've got so far. Okay, so is the meeting going to
I didn't
start?
really see too many questions per se, just more comments.
Okay. And then you put the Senate bill. Okay.
I didn't see any hands up either. Does
Oh, Lori asked
anybody
if
have questions?
Bear 3 was the building that was sinking. That was the rumor in the beginning, but I don't know that that was actually the fact because I went on a tour. A lot of us went on a tour that were in the Citizens Academy, and that's the building they took us in because they were using it for storage, and there were no problems with the sliding doors. There were no my loved one was in Rawlins in the Wyoming State Penitentiary that was sinking, and they literally had cracks in the glass, and the sliding doors didn't slide right. I didn't notice anything in that building verifying that it was sinking. And if it was, then they've had 3 years to fix it. But the places we went, Shane, on our tour, it was all fine. All the sliders worked, and there was no cracks in the glass on the outside of the pods. Jenny asks if we want to write a letter about this, where would we send our emails? They would go to these legislators that Shane's got on this slide or this screen, and that's at le.utah.gov, and then you go to the Senate Judiciary Law Enforcement Committee, and it lists them, and you can click on each one's name, and it will give you the emails. But like I said before, not this weekend, but the week last weekend, we posted all of their emails with their names in one of those. You're going to have to scroll through the posts, but when you get to those posts, you're going to find them or email correction or not corrections, Utah Prisoner Advocate, and I can cut and paste them off the list and send them to you. Um, okay. So, and then Shireen says they have lived experience with it, and then send legislators. Yep. Um, okay. So somebody has a question back about Utah's Corrections Watch. Actually, Nadine Sawyer started that, and she's pretty vocal. She was interviewed in a Channel 4 sometime last week. I don't remember the day, about one of these bills, and now I can't remember which one. Shane, do you remember?
I'm looking for it right now.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
I'm sorry. I get too much information in my mind at
Yeah,
once.
it's a lot.
So then, is there an opportunity to go speak to the legislature? As individual citizens, yes, we cannot lobby based on our 501(c)(3). So we don't go as UPAN, I go as, well, I haven't spoken there at the legislature for quite a few years. I write my emails and send them to all of them. But I go as someone who has a family member incarcerated in the state of Utah's prison system, as a former therapist that worked with justice-involved people for all those years, and as someone who founded an advocate organization. How do I advocate for hands-on programs in Max? Okay, Ginny, don't let us forget this. That's a different topic because that you need to. So Susan Sundstrom is UPAN's Director of Educational Opportunity, and we might need to connect you with her. We've had a lot of problems with the educational programs and what's available this last year. Things that were approved 2 years ago in 23 have started falling off this past year. Um, and they have changed educational directors twice in the last 2 years. Oh, here we go. Shane's got a thing on the chat about what Utah Corrections Watch is. That's a really good question, Dan. Do they have enough personnel to open Bear 3? That's what they've been telling us all along is one of the reasons it wasn't opened is they didn't have enough staff. the goal is to have enough staff sometime by the end of 2026 and have that opened. Okay, Karen, thank you, Karen. On the tour, we were told that it was staffing that prevented opening Bear 3, and now the staffing levels have increased. Oh, was the 130 million approved to add a new wing at Gunnison? I think that was just heard today, but I don't know what the result is. It still has to finish
Um,
going through the legislature.
HB 20 was heard today. So, and
Yeah.
I think those are two separate issues.
No, that's 130 million,
No,
wasn't it,
but the
Lisandy?
I don't think the actual appropriations money that she was asking for, I don't think it's attached to a bill yet. HB 20 was just the creation of the account.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like maybe not. So what, Chief Bricker? So I talked to Chief Nick Bricker. He's Chief of Prison Operations for Utah Department of Corrections. And subsequently, I talked to Executive Director Garcia and two of the deputy executive directors about this. And the idea is, because I was saying, why, if we don't even have Bear 3 open, are you looking at starting to build more space in Gunnison? And they explained this is a 10-year projection that they're going to need 700 and however many, 80 or whatever more beds in Gunnison by 2036. Okay, I'm just going to give you Molly Prince's opinion because I've been on the sex offense programming task force for basically 30 years. I just resigned last week, which oversees therapists that provide treatment in the community for people who have a sex offense. And what I learned through that over all the years is Gunnison has always had trouble getting both substance use treatment providers and sex offense treatment providers down there because there's just not a huge pool of master's level licensed clinicians down in that Sanpete County, down in that area. And so I know recently we learned that the HOPE program, which is the substance use program, lost like three therapists. So all these people that were slated to start that program are now back on hold again. Because if a therapist leaves and you're lucky enough to find another one, let's say a therapist leaves today and I'm lucky enough to find another one to fill that position next week. Well, with UDC, they still have the whole training and onboarding process that can take 2 to 3 months. So even in the best case scenario, I see Scott nodding. Yes, you know this. Um, in the best case scenario, everybody's going to be delayed 3 to 6 months before getting back in when therapists leave. And as a therapist who's worked I never worked in the prison, but I did run a program in a halfway house when I worked for one company on contract with the department. It's really hard to be a therapist in a correctional setting because you want to help, you want to have empathy, you want to understand, you want to to know your clients, and you're restricted by all of these rules that say what you can and cannot do. And I was just in a halfway house, and I never wanted to go to the prison. But I would get in trouble if I had an upset client that was ready to want to punch out his shift leader, which is the equivalent of a PO. If I went out back and just walked the yard with him for our session to help him get that energy out, process it, and then I would get in trouble because I was supposedly putting myself in jeopardy because they said they couldn't always see me on the cameras. Well, then tell me where the cameras are and I won't walk where they're not. But don't tell me I can't go help de-escalate my client, right? So I didn't last in a correctional facility for more than a year. So anyway, it's hard to get therapists that want to stay in that setting. Um, so my issue now is if they're going to expand it, are they going to add funding to guarantee that all the ancillary services are present? If you're going to put 780 more people in Gunnison, Are you going to have the funding for substance use therapists, for mental health therapists, for sex offense therapists? Are you going to have all the facilitators for the risk reduction classes and the volunteers that are necessary in addition to the officers? Like, are you going to have the medical staff? So that's the piece about that. Um, okay, Max has limited classes, and I believe, hang on. There's a classroom where they can remain handcuffed to the desk, but it's uses. Yeah, the in Antelope, well, I sat in one in Gunnison, and Antelope has the same thing. There's a classroom where they can go in person, and then you have these specialized desks that you can be shackled to in order to be taught in person with people that maybe you wouldn't get along with in the room. But there are never more than like six of those desks in a room that I've seen. Do you remember that, Jenny?
Yeah, I think it was either 6 or 8, but then they put all those classes on hold because didn't they start my story in there and then have to stop it or something?
Well, Captain My Story is by volunteers, and so it's an amazing program. And so I don't know what they did with Antelope. I can find out. Amy Chandler is the one that runs that, and I know though that they were putting more classes in maximum security on tablets, but I still haven't gotten an answer. About a month ago, I got a complaint from an inmate that they started taking their tablets away at 4 p.m., but he was in a class that went from 3 to 4:30 p.m. that had a live person, but they did it on the tablet. And so it meant that everyone in that class was going to miss that last half hour of class, which I don't care if they give them credit for it. The person isn't learning what they need to learn if they don't get to be present. And it's okay, this is my bias from years of facilitating treatment groups and classes. In person is always optimal. Tablet is second best. Video is second best. But when you're doing like risk reduction and changing, things that are helping people examine themselves, in person is better. Scott, you have a hand up.
So Molly, all right. So I did a year at Gunnison, and that was 2 years ago. Okay.
Okay.
And recently I did Captain, My Story Matters. And this is my book from it, right? And you really can't effectively do it on a tablet. Okay. You need to have the book because you're going to do a lot of writing and self-assessment and improvement, which is the whole point of that class, is to change. And really that's what incarcerations is, right? To give us the opportunity to change and be better.
Yeah.
But because of the rules, okay, you're going to put a lot of personal stuff in there, right? And the tablets aren't conducive to that. Now, how do we work around that? I don't know. I need to have a conversation with Amy one of these days. But yeah, the Department of Corrections never makes anything easy, right? It's just so many hurdles, and it's so something I want to tell you is I'm a state delegate. Okay. Yes, right. So you and I should have a conversation one of these days, and hopefully I can help you bubble things up. Now I'm going to be quiet.
Okay, Scott, please email me. Okay?
I will.
Okay. Um, I should, okay, this is public knowledge. So everybody, no matter who hears this, I'm going to be really clear. Brian Nielsen, or no, Brian Taylor, sorry, getting my names mixed up. Brian Taylor, for years, was in charge of like the volunteer services that offered programs in both prisons. Programs like My Story Matters, Captain Your Story. He was amazing. He got people in And we had so many wonderful programs from when Brian Red took over. He kind of gave Brian Taylor more freedom to expand programming. And then this year, he was reassigned and taken out of that position. And that's when we started seeing some of those volunteer programs that were amazing sort of fall apart a little bit. Um, the turnover, and I don't even want to say turnover as if they're leaving. The reassignment of people is one of the problems that we face all the time. Gail, I see your hand up before we move on. Are you there, Gail?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh, hello.
My sons were cooking. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah, they're cooking, so they're making all the banging in the kitchen. So I had to turn everything off. Uh, I miss everybody. It's good to see everybody, and we're in the middle of legislation and the letters. You can write letters. There's some that will respond, but a lot of times during the legislation they won't. But I have gotten correspondence with some of them. Melissa Ballard, for one, she really tracks things that are happening with our women in particular.
Mhm.
She responds by email. I've gotten even a phone call from her. So just reach out to them and tell them thoroughly what your issues are. Right now, my daughter has not received her tablet. She's got classes. She does a group leader mentorship type coursework every week, several times a week, and there are no tablets. I don't know how long it'll be till they get them back, but she said they haven't had tablets for at least 3 weeks. So
So,
that's very
Gail,
concerning. And
I know that the men had all of theirs taken away when some people broke the firewall of the tablets in
mhm,
the education building at USCF and accessed a program that could create AI pornography. I've learned this from inmates. The
yeah.
prison, I want to be clear, UDC has never told me, yes, this is true, or no, it's not true. They just don't answer that question. But the men had it gone for 2 weeks. Now, the women have a different tablet than the men do, but I recommend you email her case manager and try to find out. And if you can't, email Ski, Ezekiel Afatasi. And if you don't have his email, email me and I'll give it to you. This is for everybody. Ski is the Stakeholder Experience Coordinator for the
Mhm.
Utah Department of Corrections. And he goes by Ezekiel Afatasi is his name. And we as family members are stakeholders. Incarcerated people are stakeholders. People who provide services in the prison are stakeholders. Advocates are stakeholders. So he has been able to help us sometimes get things moving. He does not have the authority to change anything or get her tablet, but he does have the authority to bring it to the attention of leadership that the women still don't have their tablets or people in education that are, in classes still don't have their tablets and have that looked at. It could be individual issues. That kind of goes along with what Shireen has asked on this chat about people that get moved and they lose their programming opportunities and then they're back to the beginning of the wait list or the end of the wait list, back to the bottom.
Mhm.
Sometimes it can be looked at individually and that can help. Sometimes it's just so many things that they won't always tell us what they are.
Well,
But
I know
email
there
me
there
and I'll
are
give you his
some.
key.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's for everybody, especially the new people on here. You can go to the offender search at corrections.utah.gov If you go to corrections, I hope everybody on here has thoroughly read everything on the UDC website. So you know what they're saying is supposed to happen. Corrections.utah.gov. And then you click on that offender search button or that thing. And then you can put in your loved one's offender number or your loved one's name. And then you click, um, Shane, put in, I'm going to tell you to put somebody in, okay? Put in, number 35443. Oh, that might not work because he's out. 35443. Try that. Okay. So put in, gosh, I don't want to give anybody's name away.
You can use my son's.
Oh,
Okay,
we just
what's
don't want to put people's personal info out there.
out on the
Probably a bad
for the
idea.
world to see?
Oh, okay.
Because if they see this on YouTube, you don't, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um,
He's very good at saying, yeah, if he wants to help in any way.
I know, but we kind of have an ethical issue about
No, you're fine. You're
Oh,
fine.
it just comes up and it just basically says the area where they are and their case manager.
Yeah, and so on the phone, it doesn't, you sometimes have to click view on the right-hand side to get it to give you the full thing where it shows their case manager's name and email address. So that's how you find the case manager. Okay, Shane put the correctional facility capacity amendments in here. So Dan asked, how closely does the Board of Pardons follow did you mean the matrix? Okay. So I'm not sure if you're asking, do they follow So the easy answer is everybody can go to the bop.utah.gov, which is the Board of Pardons website, simple bop.utah.gov. And somewhere on there, they now have an inmate handbook. That inmate handbook is on the tablets for people, under offenders and family. I recommend every family member read that handbook. I was on the committee that spent 7 years trying to get them to produce something so that families and inmates understand how the Board of Pardons works. And it finally came out earlier this year. Well, no, it was in 2025, actually. We're in 26 now. And one just came out this last month for parole violators. But read through that. So the Board of Pardons is not supposed to release somebody underneath the bottom number. So let's say you have a 5 to life, or your loved one has a 5 to life. They're not going to be released before 5 years, right? And the board keeps changing when they do their original hearing, and they've tried to line them up closer to when their bottom number is. So if somebody's in on a 10 to life, they're not going to have an original hearing until maybe 9 years in, right? I know that's discouraging, but that's just how the matrix is. So the matrix you have to understand, and I hope it remained in this handbook. There are different matrices. So the matrix that's produced by AP&P in the pre-sentence investigation report, that's for sentencing. Then when somebody goes to the board redoes the matrix based on other mitigating or aggravating factors based on their behavior and performance in the institution. So if they're taking their courses, they're staying out of trouble, they're not getting a lot of write-ups, or at least they're not getting horrible write-ups. I mean, now you can get a write-up for destruction of state property for a tear in your sheet when you turn it into laundry. So, that's very different than assault on an inmate or assault on an officer, but they're going to look at the behavior. And so that matrix is going to be different than the sentencing matrix. And they're calling them matrices now, but she says we like to think of them as guidelines because a matrix is not set in stone. It doesn't guarantee that you're getting out after 72 months or 96 months or whatever. It's a guideline based on all the other factors that someone does. Do they do all their case action plan classes? Do they do the contingencies that the board sets that says, oh, you've got to do substance use treatment and have no major write-ups in order to get out? Okay, so it's still kind of fluid. Okay. I don't know if that answers your question, Dan, but okay, Shane has put in here what they've published on the $130 million expansion over the next 10 years. Oh, Dan, he says my keyboard has a mind of its own. How closely does the board follow the incarceration calculation in releasing prisoners? Okay, did I explain that maybe? I don't see you on here, so I'll just keep scrolling. What are they doing about mental health help? Lori, that is an excellent question. Um, we are really fortunate, okay? UPAN was able to get the very first audit of medical back in, I think it was 2021. I mean, we were working on it before then, but we've gotten a few legislative audits done in the last 13, 14 years, 13 years. We got an audit of the Board of Pardons, which is why they now have an electronic system instead of the old paper records. So the first one was done in 21. And then they finally got the oversight from Department of Health and Human Services ordered by the legislature that started in I think it was 23. I think we've had them in charge for 2 years when the Department of Health and Human Services was assigned to and actually took over July of 2023, the oversight of correctional health services in the prison. Since that time, we've developed our med team. So I'm on the med team, Jenny's on the med team, an RN named Maureen's on the med team. And we have developed really good relationships with Dr. Wisner with DHHS. He's an administrator, but he worked at the prison in the past. He's a dentist, so he's not providing medical care, but he's a medical administrator at this point. And he's worked really hard. And the one thing I know we're all frustrated over medical and mental health, but what he tells us, and he has told me numerous times, Molly, you guys will always have a seat at the table because you're how we know where their problems are. This is they have two prisons. They have 6,000 people between those two prisons that they're trying to provide, and then IPP that they're trying to provide medical care for. And things are going to fall through the cracks. And sometimes their medical staff isn't on top of things. And that's what Jenny and Maureen and I do every week. One of us or all three of us is working on a case that's fallen through the cracks. And Dr. Power, who actually sees patients at USCF, and Dr. Wisner, we have a good working relationship with them. Now, that doesn't mean we get what we ask for, and it doesn't mean we get to know what we want to know. If my loved one's going to have a surgery, I already know. I'm not going to know when he goes to the hospital. I'm not going to know if he's going to be kept overnight. I'm not going to know when he gets back. I'm not going to know until he's capable of calling me. If I go to visit and he's in the hospital, they're not going to say, "Oh, Molly, I'm sorry, he's in the hospital." They're just going to say he's not available or he's on lockdown or it's none of your business, but they're not going to tell me. So that's the misery that we go through as family members with the unknown. We're never going to change that. We have tried really hard to get them to agree to notify families, but they only notify them when it's life and death. They only notify them when it's really, really rough. And on that note, just when it's really, really rough, I have known a handful of people who have been called and have met Doug Fawson at the hospital. Doug Fawson is the person that does this kind of, he notifies you of deaths. If you have a death in the family, you can notify him and he'll make sure that your loved one knows. But he has met people at the hospital to be able to visit their loved one before they die. It's not widely advertised, and he doesn't just answer phone calls when people call him because everybody tries to call him when maybe it's not life or death. And I'm not trying to be callous, but that's just the way it is. But they have, just so everybody knows, they have a rule, an agreement with University of Utah Medical Center. The university cannot give information out when there's an inmate there, and they cannot let anyone visit that inmate. Inmates are not allowed to have visits when they're in the hospital. And UDC has the agreement that they will not tell families when their loved one are going there because they've had problems in the past with families showing up, creating problems, trying to see their loved ones. And then the flip side is with all the gang activity, they've had hits out on people that are at the hospital where somebody has come in to try to see them in order to do them harm. So I know it's frustrating for us, but eventually, I mean, like the big picture is they're just going to err on the side of safety. Now, with mental health, I've been complaining about this for years. As a mental health therapist, my own loved one back in 2010 really, really needed to talk to someone. And when I called the mental health person that he had talked to once, and then she never came back for 6 weeks, she said, Molly, I have 300 people I'm supposed to be covering, right? Because he called me and he says, they give me the same handouts you give me, because I would mail him handouts, right? He was in maximum security. And I would email him, worksheets and self-study stuff. And my husband would not email, I would physically mail him. My husband would do the same. But that was the best she could do. Well, when I was talking to Dr. Wisner after this latest audit, he admitted, he said, we have 18 therapists, like 18 mental health providers, meaning licensed therapists. They finally got a psychiatrist that stuck around in USCF. They've had one part-time in Gunnison, but they have 18 mental health providers. 4 of them are in Gunnison. The other 14 are in USCF. 18 for like 6,000 people. He would love to triple that, but there's no money, and there's no money because they're not going to get the money because Governor Cox had him try to reduce his budget 5% a year for the last 2 years. And Governor Cox has told all state agencies that they need to do a 5% cut, and they're not going to get new positions funded in this legislative session for the next fiscal year. So, that's something else you can write your legislators about. Because I believe that there are at least 90% of the people in general population and in maximum security could benefit from talking to someone about what they're experiencing, especially those that are being extorted and abused and raped and stabbed. Like Scott said, you go to prison to rehabilitate. And so if you get a write-up, you can't get into programming anymore. So that stops rehabilitation. And then when you've got, and believe me, innocent people get write-ups too. I mean, people that are defending themselves, you still get a write-up. If you're jumped and you fight back, you're going to get a write-up. Now, I know people that are being charged criminally, third-degree felonies for assault on a prisoner just for defending themselves in the court. So now they have a new charge. It's gotten just really, really rough. Okay. So anyway, Lori, uh, we just need to let our legislators know how important it is that they need the mental health treatment. Um, Dr. Wisner, in the best possible world, there'd be like 60 mental health therapists between two prisons, right? But there's not. Dan, when do they get their tablets back? They told us they were confiscated in Salt Lake City. Yes, they were confiscated not this past Friday, but the Friday before. But we were told by Ski, and I think it's on this page, Shane, if you scroll up somewhere. Oh, it's on the first page. So whatever date that was, but they were supposed to all have them back this is Monday. So I think it was Friday. They should have all gotten the rest of them back, but we're hearing from a few people that certain people haven't gotten theirs back, and that's when they need to talk to their case managers or email ezekiel@utah.gov.
Says, please be advised the electronic tablet services to incarcerated individuals at our facilities has now been restored. The service was reactivated on Friday, February 6th.
Okay. Oh, Susan wrote in here, Desiree Ellers, who used to be over education, is now over the volunteers. Okay, that's good that Antelope has their tablets back. Okay, Maureen, there's a 61% recidivism statistic that Dan's asking about. I don't know if you've answered that. And Shireen, I know I've seen copies of the emails. They should be getting, Shireen, sorry, Shireen. They should be, I think you've got individual attention now on for your son, so I don't know why he's not able to log on now. Yeah, I wish Valerie would have shown up. I'm gonna I'm gonna shift something really quick. I'm wondering if UDC has just basically told her not to come, maybe. Um, because I'm gonna be honest, they're not happy with me that I was against House Bill 93 or Senate Bill 93 about taking the mandatory reporting by UDC away for the tiered housing and I made it clear I didn't write on behalf of UPAN. I wrote on behalf of Molly Prince. And believe me, Molly Prince writes her legislators about all sorts of things, not just prison issues. So, um, okay, then. Oh, I love Bart Mortensen. Bart Mortensen, I've known him from years ago when he was an APMP agent, and I was a therapist having to report to APMP agents about my client's progress. He's he's he was great as a warden. He's over reentry and rehab, and I think he's doing good things. I think when they combined programming, is what it used to be called, with reentry, they made it kind of big. And I think it's a good concept, but if they don't have enough people over every little thing, I think it makes it challenging. But he's done some good things with the reentry case managers. I don't know, Scott, if you got out when they had the reentry case managers following you for like 90 days so you could get help.
So to answer your question, Molly, before before I saw the board, one of my problems was my case manager had not put anything in my file. There was nothing in there, right? So they had to change my board date, and that's the case for a lot of guys, right? And so you're waiting, you're hoping your case manager is going to do their job. That's one. Because if the file goes to the board and they don't have it, if there's no comments in there, then they're going to move your date, and that could be for some guys that can be years, right? Which is not fair to the inmate, right? You know, the inmate's doing everything he or she's supposed to do, but because the file's not complete, they're not going to look at it, right?
Right.
But so I work for a not-for-profit, right? And the not-for-profit, that's how I know Bart. And Bart has told everybody that's subordinate to him to change their attitude. Okay, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
So we know that over 90% of people that are involved with the criminal justice system are going to go back into the public. Don't we want those men and women to have the opportunity to become who they can be, right? To realize their potential and be those contributing members of society. Yes, we all want that. Now, it's how do we make that happen? And that's so from the outside, I'm trying to do what I can, and then I have made friends that are still locked down, and and they need hope and purpose, right? I mean, that's what I needed when I was in, okay, and and that's why I talk to those guys and gals actually, on a regular basis, and Bart is trying to make a change, but there's a lot of in Utah, the overarching, I think that's prevalent in society is if you go to jail, you belong there, and if you go to jail or prison, let's throw away the key. But that's not effective. Having been both sides, right? Having been in the public and then having been in the system, which is an irony in and of itself. But I was a counterintelligence agent, right? And I had PTSD from injuries, and I tried to shoot myself, and I was convicted of attempted assault on myself. And the judge said he's sick of veterans trying to kill themselves and was going to make an example out of me. So he sentenced me to a couple of years. Okay, so I did a year in jail and then I did a year in prison. Okay, and now I'm a convicted felon. Okay, all right. I understand his point, but I think he's dead wrong. So anybody that's a veteran, those are my folks that are especially vulnerable, right? And because if you're a veteran, you got PTSD, and when you think about every inmate's going to have PTSD, you're going to get it. It's not a normal situation. It's noise, it's violence, it's all those things. And so when we talk about a lack of mental health, I mean that that is criminal. Okay, why is yes, we need the funding, and we need those folks that are going to serve. And yeah, if you work in Gunnison, as for example, in mental health, that's Gunnison's way the heck out there, right? I mean, when it's really this is a hard thing, and I'm so glad that all you folks are concerned about our loved ones that are incarcerated, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take us to, we're going to have to turn the ship. We've got to change attitudes, and I think awareness is a lot of it too. And so now I'm going to be quiet.
Thank you, Scott. But what you say is absolutely true. When I used to work with clients coming out of prison, it didn't take very long to see the symptoms, but I always expected that they would have a trauma disorder. I used to call it PPSD, post-prison traumatic or stress disorder, but it is absolutely real. And living in those, I have PTSD from having a loved one in the prison system for 20 years. Just family members undergo such incredible stress and anxiety over the well-being and safety of our loved ones, not to mention just like the little stressors of which are big in the moment, but Friday takes me half the day to get ready, drive out to the prison, get there for my visit, and I walk in and it's, oh, we just went into lockdown. And I'm like, well, if I wait a half hour, do you think they'll open it up? Because they used to, but they're really strict now. So they're like, no, go home. And then when I found out that was at 3:55 that they sent me an email at 3:55 when I was already walking into the prison, right, to check in. And so about 3:56 or 7 is when I found out. My loved one couldn't call me all weekend because of the constant lockdowns, but when he did call me, this morning, he told me the incident happened an hour and a half before the visit. They could have notified all of us, right? But that's just the way it is. And so little things like that add up for all of us families. And, I didn't go home crying this time. I remember the first time we got turned away years and years ago at the old prison. The guy told us, my husband and me, we went to check in. He said, "Oh, he's not taking visitors today." And I'm like, "He's not taking visitors? What does that mean? Did he refuse us?" Like, I didn't know at the time how it all worked, that they didn't get his opinion, right? Well, he was in medical, we found out later. I don't know how, I still to this day, after all these years, don't know how it's a security issue to tell a family member he's in getting a checkup in medical, right? They're not saying he's off campus, he's not at the hospital, but they won't do it. That day, I was so shook up because my husband and I were both, why is he not seeing us? So then we go down the rabbit hole of, well, let's see, did he get a tattoo and he's afraid to be strip searched because he'll get caught for it? Well, did he get into a fight so he's got bruises he's going to be asked about so he doesn't want to be strip searched? Like, we go through all this stuff. And it just turned out he was in medical and they called him and he didn't have time to get to a phone to try to call us. And that's back when you couldn't have a cell phone, you had to have a landline. And so anyway, just the way it is. I got way off. But thank you, Scott. We all, and families, that's why this group, and it's so important that we talk to each other and that you have someone to talk to. I mean, I've had my own therapist. I may be a therapist, but I've had my own therapist, right? It's okay. It's healthy to take care of ourselves. Gail, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, last May, women were making reports of being strip searched and filmed. And so letters went out. I think a couple of them had their attorneys write letters. And I'm not sure where that is in court right now, but it's ongoing. Even women that were pregnant, and they were saying, you can't go into any activity, any classes. It got really bad throughout the spring. Melissa Ballard went to the prison to play. She's a concert pianist or something. She went over there, and some of the women didn't go because they had to get strip searched just to attend some of these functions.
Yeah.
And so, yes, did you hear about that?
I heard about that, but I heard they stopped doing the filming of it and that they're supposed to only be strip searched by women. Is that what's happening now?
Well, at one point, they had all kinds of male deputies,
Right.
the sergeants, the it just got really bad. And I just feel like it just became very concerning,
Yeah.
where not only one guard, but multiple. I mean, I understand, according to the letters that we got from over 100 women, that people were filming them. All kinds of people are watching. Other women were watching. It's just
Yeah.
sounds so crazy and bizarre.
We still get those not I haven't gotten any of that from the women recently, and maybe if it's in litigation, that's why. Maybe they've
Yes.
stopped that. But I get complaints from men
Uh-huh.
because when someone gets strip searched and contraband is found, then
Hmm.
the supervising officers, like the sergeants, lieutenants, captains, all the way up the chain, are supposed to review those videos.
Hmm.
And some of those are women. So I'm
Yes.
getting complaints now from the men that, you know, I don't want D'Amico seeing my
Right.
junk, I don't want so and so. And these are the kinds of things they don't talk to us about because it's about safety and security.
Right.
I was told by the previous Division of Prison Operations person who just left at a very innocuous thing I asked. She said, Molly, I'm not going to tell you that because that's a security issue and we don't need it getting out. And it was simply about how they were staging people to go to chow, go to visit, and go to education because they changed it without telling the inmates. And
Hmm.
so people were missing.
Hmm.
And so if they won't tell us about staging to leave to go to chow or to go to a visit or to go to education, um,
Hmm.
that was a problem. But anyway, she's not there. But I
Yeah.
hope that they get that litigation settled and that that never happens again.
Yeah. It's specifically in violation of what's called the Prison Rape Elimination Act
Yep,
42.
yep.
That's what they're posting as a violation. So
Yes,
just keep in prayer. That's all we can do is just be in prayer and continue to love our families as they exit as well. They really need that wraparound of everything out here. It's such a challenge. Hmm.
exactly. Um, we're skipping all over the place in this chat and we've got 37 more to go. So Shireen's asked about abruptly discontinuing SSRIs. The doctors know this is a problem. There is absolutely a problem in the process because when people are on an SSRI antidepressant, if it's a keep on person medication that they can take themselves, there's a line on that blister pack that says when they're supposed to order their refill. And it's usually like a week ahead of time so that so it's continuous. But every 6 months, they're supposed to be seen, just like out here, every 6 months to a year. If we're on an antidepressant or a psychotropic medication, we're supposed to be seen. Well, even for my cholesterol medication, I have to be seen once a year and have my blood taken, right? And so then it's up to the incarcerated person to put in for that. The problem is the healthcare requests don't get triaged like they're supposed to. There's just a lot of issues. But yes, it's very detrimental when someone is taken off their medications immediately. Um, okay. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with this scroller thing. The fact that they don't notify families is incredibly inhumane. Um, actually, Dan, it happened in Wyoming as well. When my loved one was in another state. My loved one's been in 2 states over the last 22 years. It's that way throughout the nation. They do not tell people when their loved ones are in the hospital because bad things can happen, especially when rival groups are involved. Um, and families can go make a stink, and then that makes it hard for the hospital. Then the hospital doesn't want to have a contract with the prison because they don't want the drama. Um, let's see, stakeholder. Um, okay, Conquest. So how close are they to approve the solid program instead of making everyone get transferred to green for the drug program? Well, the solid program isn't a drug program. It's a peer-led program, and it's an excellent program, but it's not a specific drug program that is recognized by the Board of Pardons like a clinical program. So, the old Conquest, I think, is now called Ascend or Ascent. And you're right, they don't mix the mental health therapists in with the drug counselors. And I have nothing against someone who's a certified drug counselor, but they're not clinically licensed like as a mental health therapist. Um, so it gets really complicated. Um, this is another example of needing more mental health therapists throughout the prison system. Okay, Karen says the policy not to notify seems to be nationwide accepted practice. Yes, covered under the umbrella of safety. Karen says that she's going to research more, and Doug or Dan or Doug, whoever asked that, Karen has put her email in the chat so you can send her an email and she'll respond to you. Karen is one of our directors. She's our director of special projects. Oh, Patty asked why they can't defend themselves, and Shireen said something. Things have changed in 20 years. In the past, if you were attacked, you could defend yourself and you might get a write-up for fighting, but you wouldn't get a criminal charge. Now, what I was told is that the Law Enforcement Bureau, which handles CERT, the Critical Incident Response Team, which is kind of like what did it used to be called? Anyway, the guys that dress up in the camouflage and the ones with the dogs. It used to be called SWAT. Yeah. Okay. The Law Enforcement Bureau is just so adamant that they're going to clean up the drugs, at least in USCF. I can't speak much for CUCF because we don't get as much complaints from CUCF as we do USCF in terms of inmate violence and drugs. But they're adamant that they're going to clean it up. Well, the drug trade inside the prison is conducive to violence. If Let's just go to the depression that happens when someone goes to prison, right? You've lost everything. You're stripped of even your own underwear. You're put in a place where you don't know the rules, you don't know what's going on. You're inundated with information that is, when we're in that kind of high stress situation, our cognitive functions, we don't remember what we're told. Most people who go through the intake in Fremont aren't going to remember what forms they signed and what they were told those first 3 weeks because they're in such intensive emotional stress. So, then they get into the general population and it's highly stressful. And so a lot of people will turn to drugs. Even people that have never used drugs before will, and people that came in on psychotropic medications like an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety that didn't get it back because they couldn't get the records from the community. And that's the other thing for new people. If you can facilitate getting your loved one's medical records to the prison, do it. But then they start using the illicit drugs and then they owe a lot of money because now they owe the inmate that's selling the drugs money, and he wants his money, or she, but I'm talking about men's general population right now. And then the family's going to get a call. Mom, I need you to put $100 on, XYZ's books, and here's his offender number. And you're saying why, And so a lot of new people new to the prison don't understand. They get hooked into gambling, which they lose a lot of money. They can get hooked on drugs, which they lose a lot of money, or they're vulnerable. They've got a mental health issue. They might have a sex offense on their record. They might be LGBTQIA. They might not be the same gender identity as where they're housed because Utah law says we must house them in the unit that their sex on their birth certificate says they are, even if they've already transitioned in the community. That takes like a court order. That's a whole nother issue. But these are vulnerable populations that are targeted. Developmental disabilities. They're targeted by people who are looking to support themselves in prison in an illegal way. Instead of going and doing good and not getting any write-ups and trying to get a job with UCI or something, they're going to have an empire that's of illegal activity. And so those people are the ones that get extorted. In USCF, in the 8-man cells in Bear 1 and Bear 4, if you're not an active gang member, the active gang members own the phones. And if you're not one, then you either pay rent to them for the phone, or in some units, they let the non-affiliated have a phone, but not in every unit because sometimes there's too many different gang groups. There's only 6 phones, right? So if gang A has 2 phones, gang B has 2 phones, and gang C has 2 phones, then the non-affiliated don't. So there's all this stress going on. And the Law Enforcement Bureau doesn't acknowledge any of that. They just want to catch the bad guys, and then they don't, in my opinion, they don't care who it hurts. Okay, prisoners don't have the same rights as civilians. Bart is great, he is. I know there are problems with IPP. Okay. But I'm glad my loved one is in a county jail rather than at the state prison. Even though there may be fewer programs, I'm sure he's safer. And you know what, Vicky, I agree. I have wanted to get my loved one to an IPP jail, but because he needs his surgery, he's not going anywhere. But on the flip side is recreation and all the stuff with the IPP jails. There's drawbacks. It's highly expensive to be in an IPP jail. Oh, here, thank you, Shane. Somebody asked about what does a case manager do? Shane wrote, in the Utah Department of Corrections, a case manager is basically the person or one of the key people responsible. Oh my gosh. My slider doesn't.
You want me to read it?
Will you read it? My slider is
Yeah.
bouncing me around.
In the Utah Department of Corrections, a case manager is basically the person or one of the key people responsible for an incarcerated person's path through the system, like day-to-day assessing needs, building a plan, connecting them to programming, tracking progress, and producing the documentation that affects classification and release decisions. 5 top things they do: build and maintain a case action plan, or CAP, assess risk needs and set a treatment and programming direction, coordinate programming and track compliance and progress, be the internal and external liaison, produce reports and paperwork that matter for decision making. What they don't do, they are not the same as role as AP&P agents in the community. Those agents wear multiple hats like law enforcement, social work style supports. And they're also typically not the person who can override sentencing, board of pardons decisions, or many custody security policy through their documentation and recommendations can influence some outcomes. So like for good behavior or participation in programs, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Okay, I found a way to make my slider work, but I can't see any of you anymore. I had to make my screen on the chat big. So there are some really great case managers. I've had letters asking me, will you please give so-and-so a shout out to the administration? And then, of course, we get a lot of complaints. There are case managers that don't do their jobs properly, and we report those. If you have a case manager in your loved one's life that is not doing their job and you share that with us at our email address, UDC does know that we have a policy of not sharing identities of where we get our information, unless, of course, it's a medical crisis and we have to share the identity to get the patient help, or unless it's a safety issue where we have been given permission by the family or the incarcerated person to share their identity so that they can maybe get moved. But that's another tricky situation. So if you're having problems with a case manager, you can always email UPAN and give the name of the case manager and the exact situations that have happened, what has been asked, what has not been done, what has been done, and we can just report that in kind of a generalized way, but their name. We have to have their name. Sometimes we've had people write about a case manager and have to give the inmate name and offender number because the case manager didn't put their certificates in their whatever their record to go to the board. That reminds me of what was said before. In my family, what I have learned to do between two different prison systems is he sends me his certificates and I scan them and I keep them. I keep the physical ones in a file and then I keep them in an electronic file on my computer. And then when it's close to his hearing, I send all of them to the board to make sure the board has everything in case the case manager failed to get some of them in. We have talked to the board and the administrators at the board, and they're fine for us to do that. So you can do that. But they would prefer that you don't send them in one by one over a period of 5 years. Save them and send them as a group before the hearing, like a month before the hearing or something like that.
Molly, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
In lieu of keeping track, like what Scott said, because I've had issues with case management. And what I do is I submit a grandma request every year and I pull everything on my son so I can see exactly what's been recorded in his file. And that way I know what is being reported to the board on his behalf so I can see where the deficiencies are. And then I know what information I have and I keep records of everything. And then I know what needs to be sent to the board in order for them to have that information in his file. So that's another thing that you guys could do that are new that I do to keep track of my son's information for myself. So that's just something that I thought I'd share.
Thank you. That's a good method. And I may do that before board time too, just to see what we're missing. Okay, let's see. Okay, I gotta make this big again. Do we have any hands? I don't see any hands.
I don't see any.
Okay. All right, so Patty's phone asked Bear. So Patty, if you're talking about places where units like Bear, yeah, what I'm talking about with those 8-man cells are in the Bears in USCF. CUCF doesn't have any 8-man cells, and I pray that whatever they're planning on building is not going to be 8-man cells. 8-man cells don't have cameras in them, and bad things happen in those 8-man cells, where nobody can see what's happening. So,
So if Bear is more dangerous, are there less dangerous places? He hasn't been moved yet. He's in observation right now.
Well,
Just out there.
Bear 2 is less dangerous. That's the solid program.
What's the solid program again?
The solid program, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's a peer-led program, peer-led by other incarcerated individuals that they've developed a program, and they require like it's kind of like Strive in Gunnison, which is also so you have to be active, you have to be working, you have to be doing your seminars, you have to be
Takes a
doing
while. Yeah.
classes.
Takes
It's
a
a
while. Yeah.
good place to be. And to get into solid, you have to apply. But he
Right.
can apply, I think, straight from Fremont, from orientation. CUCF has some safe places in it, down in Gunnison. Most county jails are pretty safe because other than a couple that have sent quite a few modified gang members down to get their substance use treatment, and I heard that I get bits and pieces saying that that's kind of gotten a little rough. But
Why did they tell me gang members don't have access to vulnerables, that they won't be placed with vulnerable people?
who says that?
I don't know. I just, I have a friend that has 2 exes that have been in the prison, and just I don't know. Somebody told me that the gang members are kept separate from people that are vulnerable.
Not in general population.
What is general population? Is that like the Bear and things like that?
That's like Bear 1, Bear 2, Bear 3, Bear 4 in USCF. And then, so it's
Limit.
easier to put it this way. Maximum security in the Salt Lake Prison, USCF, is Antelope. And
Okay.
it's got restrictive housing. It's got 2-man cells, 1-man cells. It doesn't have any 8-man cells.
Who winds up in that?
Huh?
Who will wind up in that with 2-man cells? What kind of people?
In maximum security, anybody who gets a write-up that's serious and
Oh.
has a high enough, I'm still not clear on the point system, but enough points to get them
I came here and I thought,
taken out of general
So
population.
they're rewarded for getting in trouble.
Well, no, because they only get out of their cell for about 2 hours every 3 days.
Which is preferable to being attacked.
Well, okay, so
There's a safety section. Explain, Molly. There's a safety section, and then there's those that have too many points.
okay, so the ones that get in trouble have too many points and they go to max. But there's no such thing as protective custody in our prison system, and they've told me that 100 times, even though for 20 years, even before UPAN, I was asking them about why don't they have a protective custody. They put anyone that's vulnerable that needs to be protected into maximum security. Now, they're supposed to have a separate section, but by virtue of their housing unit and the rules in that housing unit, they still only get I don't know, 130 to 200 minutes a month of phone time. They only get 1 or 2 visits, maybe 3, maybe 4 a month. They only get, I think I said it, they still only get out of their cells I think it's 48 to 72 hours for like an hour or 2, that kind of thing. Jenny, you want to add, more about what's going on in there right now?
No, I think that's pretty much it. They're in their cell 46 hours and then out to, and if they get into any trouble, then they can even be held in their cell, for over 72 and only get like 2 30-minute breaks a week out of the cell.
Yeah, so quote unquote protective custody is not, yes, you're not getting beat up, and it's always an option if your life is at risk, of course, but it's not
not,
picnic.
yeah,
It's not
it's
a
not
privilege.
beneficial for mental health
Yeah.
at all to be back there like that for a lengthy period of time.
Yeah. Then they have administrative overrides that the administration of the prison will do for some people who are going to be, they're never going to get out of max. They're going to just be in max forever on their administrative overrides based on things they've done while they're in the institution. They no longer have a death row. People who have a death sentence were integrated into general population several years ago, with the exception, I think, well, unless they had an administrative override. I remember Douglas Carter did not want to be integrated because he'd just been back there for so long, he didn't want to be integrated, but then he won his appeal and now he's out to have a new court hearing, but now I hear he's housed in one of the jails. Are we out of time? Because we've got 32 more comments. I'm
We
so
could keep
sorry.
going, but I'm just doing a 2-minute warning, just to let you know we're at 8:30. So
Okay, does anybody see the urgent, like any other urgent things?
I'll let you decide what's urgent.
There's not, I haven't heard of any progress of getting Captain Your Story in IPP. Last year, when the legislature cut funding, they cut funding for IPP in the prison system. So Amy Chandler has donors, but I don't know if it's expanded into any of the 20 IPP jails throughout the state. Very few privileges. Okay, Amanda is encouraging everybody join the family support group in the Facebook. Please do that. You're going to learn a lot. Oh, Patty has one more question.
Okay, sorry to, okay, he only went in New Year's Day. And so I don't know, my daughter found you guys for me. So there's nothing else really, like I read the manual that he has, I think, but there's nothing really, only thing I'm gonna learn is through you guys and through what he tells me, right? I
Yeah,
don't,
still look on the UDC
family
website.
orientation.
There's
Okay,
policies, but you can always email us and ask questions too, Patty.
okay.
Okay,
It's very
Scott,
overwhelming. Okay.
I know, I'm sorry. Scott,
It's
you
okay.
have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to try to answer Patty's questions. So, so when you get transferred from wherever, from either the quarter or the jail, you're gonna arrive at a prison, whether it's Gunnison or Salt Lake. Okay, so you're gonna arrive and you go into essentially it's a holding area, okay, where you're going to be processed. It takes a couple days. They're going to look at your folder, look at your crime, and then based on your conduct too, how you're reacting to other inmates, how you treat the staff, and then you're going to get assigned somewhere. And ideally, you want to get assigned somewhere where you have the opportunity to prove yourself. And what I mean by that is where you keep yourself clean, you don't cause problems, and then you can get moved to somewhere like in my case, it took months, but I got moved to the Boulders, and now that I'm in the Boulders, I can apply, and you have to ask for. I did the Strive program, which is going to keep you busy, and so so those programs within those sections you have rules. You've got to do X, Y, and Z. Everybody's got chores, and that rotates. You got to scrub the shower. You got to do this. You got to do that, right? And so there's social rules, and then so you have a big section, and within the section you've got a pod, which is where you've got, in my case there was 12 of us in the pod. Within my pod,
this is the 14th.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, that was me.
That's
Within my pot, there was 2 convicted killers and some other guys. Okay, but you try to you got to try to get along, right? And and you try to make the best of the situation. And the thing about fights is, and the COs, they'll say this: they don't care who started it. Okay, they're not in the business of determining who started a fight and why a fight was started. If there's a fight or a riot, they're gonna punish everybody. That's just the way it is. And you just, as an inmate, you just try to avoid that stuff. You want to make the most out of your situation. And here's something that we should talk about, though. Maybe not today, but so a lot of the programs you have, they have a person that teaches the program. Only certain staff can do that, and there's shortages. And so you can be waiting. You've got to get your packet before the board, where you've got to check A, B, C, D, and there's a shortage. There's not somebody available to teach that, right? And so a lot of this is about resources, and I think it's deliberate too. I really do. I think the Department of Corrections is deliberately underfunded to make it hard. But that's just my personal opinion.
Thank you. And I want to clarify, Scott's talking about Central Utah Correctional Facility in Gunnison. The USCF has, in the general population, they have cells, not pods. They have, like, Bear One is a long building. It's got 7 housing sections in it with like 80 people each, or 60 to 80 people each. And in some sections, they're all 8-man cells. In other sections, they're mixed 8-man and 2-man cells. And it's different in 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like, I can't tell you what 4's like, but it there are some things you can't control if you're in an 8-man cell, and the guy that wants to be top dog spills his salsa on his shoes after he bumps into you and blames you, and now you got to buy him new shoes. That's what's happening in USCF. CUCF is still better, I think, but I'm not positive. But Patty, please feel free to email us and ask questions. And you can always post anonymously on the family group, because the family group has people who have all different kinds of loved ones in there with all different kinds of offenses. Some are affiliated, some are not. It's just, we try to, when we advocate for one, we advocate for all. Karen writes, reference to sharks is good and true. Please encourage our loved ones to be whales. Whales can live in polluted water if they can come to the surface to fill their lungs. Oh, geez, I can't do this. I'm guessing it says with clean air or something. It's going crazy. But that's why your letters and your and phone calls and visits are all important. My loved one, who is now, I can just tell you, he's 55 years old, and he's been in prison for the most part of 22 years. And he's getting too old for this. He was never in a gang, but he grew up on the West Side. He was never going to fight. I mean, he would fight when he had to, but he wasn't going to start a fight. In the prison now, when people are threatening to stab you, what are you supposed to do? Wait to get stabbed? So it's just a bad situation. And if they we're right back to, if they take away the mandatory reporting about direct supervision and tiered housing and housing these people properly based on their true risk, then if they do it properly, it might improve. If they take away that, then it's just going to get worse.
What is mandatory reporting?
The mandatory reporting of the UDC in Senate Bill 93, read Senate Bill 93, where it's talking about taking away, not making the UDC have to report to the legislature on its progress in moving into tiered housing and direct supervision in the general population. Okay. I'm talked out. I don't think anybody's heard from Valerie. I'm sorry she didn't show up, but it sounds like you guys had a lot of questions, so maybe this was a good thing.
Thank you.
Thank all
We
of
were
you for
overdue.
being here.
Quick
Yeah,
plug for our next meeting will be Monday, March 9th. Same place, same channel. The topic will be from incarceration to advocacy and mentoring. We'll have Savannah Bushman and Alexander Martinez. They specialize in reentry and rehabilitation advocacy and employment opportunities. So it'll be
and
good.
they have lived experience within the system. So they have completely turned their lives around. So thank
It should
you.
be good.
And they will show up.
Are they peer support specialists too?
I think Savannah is, Alex is just, he's made it his mission to help people with felonies find jobs. While he works full time at his own job because he's justice involved. So,
Mhm.
okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Be safe out there. Bye.